Alright, so today I'll go through 6 portions. Really the content bit are the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th portions. Right, and then we would call it a day for today. Okay, so this is where I work. I actually am a part-time lecturer here with the School of Social Science. Right, so you don't see my office like the other professors in the Division of Psychology. Right, I'm contracted as part of my work with Geropsychology Consultants Private Limited. You could easily find my profile on LinkedIn, on Facebook, as well as the company's Facebook page and so on, if you're interested in the kind of work that could possibly be done in the industry. Essentially, anyone who is interested in psychology could take 1 or 2 paths, right? One is to do research, the other is to do practice. Right? So some of us who do psychology know that you are interested to say become a practitioner. Right? To say help people with problems of depression, anxiety, that's mental health, or help people with behavioral problems or family problems. So that's one path you could take. And then you could train others to do the same path, or on the same path. So there are others who want to answer questions that cannot be readily answered. That's a research. Right? So this consultancy that I'm with kind of do both at the level of an industry agent. Okay, so let's go into the... Any questions so far before we head on? Okay, can I just kind of have a show of hands here so that we know kind of who are in this class? How many of you are year 4 students? Year 4? Undergraduate? Okay. Okay, thank you. We have about 7 of us. How many year 3s? Okay, looks like the majority of us. Thank you. Year 2s and year 1s, anybody? Okay, thank you. Right. And can I also see the distribution here, MBS, biological science. Okay, a group of you here and a few here, okay, thank you. 6 of us. And how many of us are psychology? Purely psychology? Okay. That's many, the majority, thank you. How about those of us in social science but not psychology? Good. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Excellent. Right. So we'll know, we're going to confirm this next week. But so now that we know, most of us are psychology majors. You're taking this as part of your elective within psychology. Okay. You will find that what successful, normal, and pathological aging is really still what we call nomenclature or jargon that is still in debate. Right? Still in debate. What constitutes success in aging? Is it good health? Is it good quality of life? Is it simply happiness as rated on the happiness index? Right? And then if there's success, then what is the opposite of it? Unsuccessful aging. So what does that mean? Failure to achieve a certain socio-economic status, failure to leave a legacy behind. We do not yet have data that can supply us information. Right? Very conclusive. So there are different thoughts. People, based on their thoughts, have done limited research on these. Right? Yet the research literature does not yet agree on what constitutes successful aging and unsuccessful aging. So same thing for normal. In fact, normal would say that most of the people, if you go by statistics, if you go by bell curve, then normal will be the mean plus minus say 2 standard deviations. Right? Normal. So then if you have the one end which has dementia and is pathological, you call it abnormal. So how about the other end? What do you call it? Any guesses? So we have abnormal on the one end. Normal is mean plus minus standard deviations of 2. What is the other end? On that continuum. What should we call it? Going by that form. From abnormal to normal to? Okay, clue for you. It has to have the word normal in it. With a certain prefix. That's right, supernormal. So have you heard of supernormal aging? Well, we know if you think of bell-shaped curve, then there will be abnormal, there will be normal, and then it has to be supernormal, right? So then, in fact, the next question could be asked, is successful aging supernormal? That means people who don't belong to the majority, not in the mean plus minus standard deviations, but tend to be sort of doing very well. But what is the definition of understanding of well, doing well, right? So that is yet uncharted territory. Finally, pathological aging, right? The idea once again, is it normal, subnormal, is it unsuccessful? At the moment, what is clear is that dementia goes under pathological aging. That's clear. So I would say among the various diseases or illnesses related to aging, dementia is one of the top areas where research has gotten some considerable and established evidence of dementia. Whether it's due to Alzheimer's disease, whether it's due to vascular or stroke, it doesn't matter. Right? So that's that. That's essentially what the textbook is saying, and what the textbook also acknowledges about the lack of clarity. Alright, so lifespan theory, there are many. Those of you who have taken developmental psychology would know there are many theories. No time to go through everything. Okay. You will know what the Erikson's theory is about, right? Erikson, as in Erik Erikson, is a psychoanalytic psychologist. So when I put young there, I'm talking about young adults. Middle is middle-aged adults. And the young old meaning, say, between 65 to 75. So you have the young old. Then you have 75 to 85, the middle old. Then you have the 85 to 95 or 100 old. I mean, that's rough ballpark. Now, how many of you are hearing young old, middle old, and old for the first time? Okay, thank you for your honesty. Right? Truth is, many of us in the industry still do not yet know the differences or even actually perceive these differences until we get to do the work. We tend to, in what we call conventional developmental psychology, regard old as old. That's it. Above 65 or 70 or 60, in the past 55, that's old age. So the theory would, that part of the theory of Erikson will apply to old age. That's it. That means this stage called ego integrity versus despair, right? You read that, right? If you took developmental psychology, right? But turns out that within the old age, there are still the younger, the middle, and the older. And this ego integrity versus despair may not apply equally to these groups. Think about it. People from 65 to 75. Is it plausible that this group of people are still physically healthy and perhaps even fit physically? Yes? It's possible? It's plausible. Right? Is it plausible that the people of this age group may not yet have grandchildren, but nevertheless will have children who are adults emerging as a young? I'm talking about 65 years to 75. Yes? Right? So it is actually plausible that at that point, right, one may still be leading an economically active or productive life, engaging in physical activities that one would in the earlier years, perhaps even going through some form of adult or continuing education. Right? Now, it is then debatable whether or not people of that age really are in this crisis, right? What Erikson would say to be integrity versus despair. Right? Because all the stages in Erikson's model is a crisis. Yes? Okay? Right. So this is just to give you the idea that yes, there is an established model called Erikson's psychosocial stage model. It does kind of cover on old age, but it doesn't, right? It kind of group all the 65 and above is one group. Right? But aside from Erikson, I'll ask you to think now. You're going to developmental psychology. It's a prerequisite of this class. Which other theory you know of in developmental psychology that includes old age? Anyone? Just go through your head quickly. Okay, so let's name those theories. Right? So Piaget, you know what Piaget, right? Piaget is called development. Right? Do you have old age there? What is the final stage in Piaget's theory? Anybody? Concrete, that's right. Concrete what? Operational, that's right. Concrete operational, and that group or age group there stands for what? What age? Where is the minimal age for that? Who remembers? Concrete operational stage. Anybody? Piaget. Okay, time to flip the side. The developmental side. Yes, prepare yourself. That's right, 12 or thereabouts. Yes, early adolescence, right? So everyone found in the world? Concrete. Okay, so that doesn't specifically cover OH. Everything is under that. Another theory, developmental? Any other theories that cover OH at least that you know? How about Vygotsky, zone of proximal development? You know what is Vygotsky's theory? Okay, I think you returned it to Prof. Chidi or something. Okay, Prof. Sito plays it with Tom that. Somebody might have taught you that. Vygotsky's theory. Alright? No, it's not covered. Oh, it's not covered there at all. Any other theory you can remember? Developmental psychology. Well, development is supposed to cover lifespan, right? Okay, so what actually do you cover in developmental HP 2300? Babies? What else? Just babies. So babies what is 0 to 1 or 0 to 7? 0 to 1 or 2, right? That's about it, right? Thank you very much. Okay, that was quick, but are there any one of us who actually went through developmental psychology, maybe in the different semester than me? And somehow there was at least one chapter on aging or OH or something that like, you know what I'm getting. Anybody? Hands up. Nobody? None at all? Okay. Thank you. Right? Thank you. That's the point. That's my point here. Conventional developmental psychology would not include in its content, right, the aging aspect. May not even include in adulthood, right? Perhaps just showing you a certain model with diagram, and the only mention is just in print. The prof may not even speak of adulthood, right? Why is that? There's a reason, but there are two reasons. Alright? One reason, and this is established, right? Where developmental psychology is concerned, early human lifespan, right? This age group or this age duration contains a lot of established research, a lot more established research than other ages. So that's the fact. There are many more scientific journals, many more university professors and faculty members, many more journal articles, even textbooks written on these areas than all the other parts of the lifespan. It's true. Whether you agree with the research findings is another thing, right? The fact is, there are a lot more research done. Of course, then, if you are curious to ask, why is that so? I won't go into that, that's another topic. Right? So that's one reason. So the second reason why typically we don't see developmental psychology containing aging, right? It's also because, it is the professor's specialization. So think about the prof who taught you, right, developmental psychology. Think about the textbooks author who write on developmental psychology, right? Those 2 or 3 authors. Right? You would find that, right, much as they are specialists, experts, in child psychology, in even neonatal psychology, that is newborn, right? They seem to be recognized, or at least recognized as experts, or recognized as knowledge custodians, right, of the entire lifespan. Right? So I'd like you to think about, and perhaps reflect on this in your journal. Why is that? Is that to you a valid, and necessarily valid way to understand or compartmentalize knowledge in development psychology? Okay? So I'm giving you now ideas on what to reflect on. So you have no lack of things to reflect on in your reflective journal. Alright? Anyone want to jump in on this point? Any contributions, questions? If not, the next theory. Shea and Willis's theory of cognition. So this really is a cognitive theory of cognition. So once again, you recall the various theories of cognition that we have learned, or rather I would say developmental theory, cognitive theory. Right? You will find that they more or less also stop at childhood / adolescence, right? More or less stop there. So Shea and Willis is at the moment the only theory, so a pair of theorists, right, that's gone beyond that and say, look, wherever we stop at, that is just what they call acquisition or acquisitive stage, right, in one's lifespan where cognition. Thereafter, there are other stages. Right? So in young adulthood, they would persist that human beings will take information for the purposes of achieving or attaining something. It could be a socio-economic status. It could be a job status, for instance. It could be, say, an income status. It could be, say, an emotional status that one wants to attain. Say, one wants to get married, right? Become a parent. So when one starts to become a parent, then you see the next stage starts to begin, the responsibility stage. Right? According to Shea and Willis, it means that now the cognitive information, thoughts, beliefs, attitudes are now kind of processed in the lens of responsibility. Which one am I responsible for? Right? And you think about it practically, it makes sense, because a person who is, say, a parent who is very stretched of time into having to give care to a child, or perhaps give care to an older child, who really want to prioritize his or her time or resources on his highly prioritized areas of responsibility. Yes? So hence, Shea and Willis's idea. So from there, right, one could go into an executive stage or a reorganization. Right? So executive, doing, action. That's what it means. So with what I'm responsible for, I will now take in more information in order to act, to decide. So think about the chief executive of the company, right? He or she basically makes decisions, right, based on information available. Right? Cover the blind, where blind spots are concerned, identify the blind spots, and still make decisions, right, in the absence of total information, right? I mean comprehensive. So that's what an executive does. And a human being kind of, right, goes into that stage, takes in information for that purpose. The human being also goes into that stage, takes in information, and then what they call young old, right? That means about 65 to 70, right? To reorganize his or her own lives. So beliefs and thoughts and attitudes and all the learning points one has at the age of 65 may be reorganized. So for instance, right? At a, say, young adulthood stage, achieving, what they value, right? What they believe they're having some type of socio-economic status. Let's say monetary possession. Let's say bank account. To be very specific. So to hit a certain million, I want to be a billionaire, let's say. That could be an attainment, a level of something to be attained. Right? At the reorganization stage, according to Shea and Willis, right, this person may start to look at the possession of this wealth in a different way. That may discount or may not discount. So if it discounts the value, then this person may say, look, okay, actually I just wasted my time, wasted my efforts in acquiring all this wealth. He needs nothing. But it may not be that. It could be, look, now with this wealth, right? It's not that I am a better person or I'm now more wealthy than others, but this wealth could now say, right, help me understand the needs of the rest of the world. Because with this help, I can now start to think about where to distribute it, like philanthropy, donation. So that is an example of reorganizing one's earlier thoughts, beliefs, learning points into then current thoughts, beliefs in young folks. So that's Shea and Willis. So after reorganization, one goes to reintegration, right? So now that different bits and pieces are kind of re-pieced together, right? He or she may at an old stage, so maybe 85 to 90 plus, right? Want to say, what does all this mean to me? So integration involves me. Right? The changing in my own beliefs over my years. Now that I spent say 40 years in this career or this work, now I spent say 30 years married to this person, now that I spent say 20, 30 years taking care of my kid, my child, right, who is now an adult who got married, right, who is perhaps even a father or mother, let's say. Well, what does all this mean to me? Right? Reintegrate. And then some people, not all, may go on to have thoughts about creating a lasting legacy, what they call the legacy creation stage. Right? So the old is old. Okay. So centenarians, people 100 years, right, and above. Right? Perhaps before that, right, may want to think, what do I leave behind for my children? Women in particular, is been found in research, women in particular do or engage in such legacy creation activities by actually giving away prized possessions to others. Physical possessions. So you might think about jewelry, let's say. You might think about, say, art pieces that she likes, and in particular this is women. So research hasn't found that men do this. Right? Men, on the other hand, right, tend to engage in what we call succession planning in the corporate world. Right? Legacy creation. So you think about, say, big corporations like Microsoft, right, like Google, like Apple. Right? So the founder, right, you can easily Google who the person is. Right? It's obviously now no longer the chief executive, because he's not running the show. Right? Nevertheless, these are men. Right? You can think about them, how they kind of may or may not be in the owner's own stage. Many of them are really kind of young to be owner's own, but many of them perhaps are, right, where the organization is concerned, having or in fact have implemented the succession plan. Okay? So this is a theory that covers the cognition field of developmental psychology beyond child and adolescent, which unfortunately is not really covered. It's not really covered in developmental psychology textbook. It will not be for some time. Once again, for those two reasons, that's okay. It is here. Questions on this? Yes, question. Yes. Yes, there is actually a last one. We found it in textbook, right? Sorry? Yes. There's creation. Yes, is there. Yes, there are variations. So I think what you're saying is there are variations to this theory due to most latest research that emerges. As I said, the field is new. Right? It's not like Piaget's theory is so established. Right? So people are trying to kind of improve on it. Add stage, remove stage, draw different arrows. You can see those arrows there. Right? People are trying to invent new arrows or turn the arrows in different directions. Right? But of course, to do all this, you need research with data, right? To support. Right? So the year 2000 version, which I put on the screen, right, has essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stages. Right? The textbook gives you a little bit more. So now we are about 20 years from 2000. Yes, we may have that, but that's not yet established. So thank you for the contribution. Right? You're not wrong. And in fact, a few others who have gone on to say 7 stages, but in fact do not have exactly something else. Right? So this is really new knowledge. You're really learning the cutting edge here, and research is ongoing as we speak. Right? We have more geropsychologists interested to do research in this area. We will have more established theories. Right? So hopefully one day you will become one of yourself. Right? And then you say maybe you will call your own theory by your name and say 10 stages. Questions? Thank you for that. Alright, let's move on. Okay. Alright. Okay, look at the middle box there. What's the difference between aging with an E and without an E? Has this ever crossed your mind? Should I spell the word aging with E or without E? Yes, anybody? Okay, you want to say something? No? Who spelled it without E? Oh, you never done it without E, it's always with E. Thank you. How many of you actually never spell it without E? Always aging with an E, hands up. Thank you, it's about 1/3. So the rest of you might have spelled it without E then. Okay, right, I have spelled it wrong. What's the difference? Venture again, it's not the textbook. Right, that's one way. Yes, so which is British? Okay. The one with the E, right? Exactly. So the British will have E, the American will have no E. Yes? So if you see a textbook that has no E, you kind of understand it will be written by Americans. Right? And nowadays, many textbooks are written by Americans. So I will use it with an E. So you will find that in my slides, I have an E. Our own textbook has no E, right? Okay, you're not sure you haven't read the textbook. Alright? Go check the textbook, it's right in the cover. Okay? Alright, there's no E. So there are people who have asked me this question, where should I spell aging with E or no E? So I just want to verify that. It's a nomenclature, it's not a main content point, but just so that you know, so that at least when you walk out of this course, you will not feel ashamed, you don't even know how to spell aging. Okay, let's try another thing. I'd like you to, okay, you have the computer again. Turn on Microsoft Office or PowerPoint, doesn't matter. I'd like you to type the word geropsychology. Just type it. Will you do that? Just type it into Microsoft Word, geropsychology. Look at me when you're done. It's very fast. Alright. Right? Okay. Now hands up if you see the red color waving line below. Hands up. Thank you very much. What does that tell us? Okay, first of all, what does that tell us on Microsoft Office? Yes, come on. Practicing participation here. Okay, next week perhaps I will ask you to write your name so I can call you by name, because I cannot recognize you by face with the mask. But never mind, what does the waving line tell us? Come on, you should know. Yes, please say it. It's not a word. Thank you. How about this table? What does the waving line tell us?
Not commonly used.
Not commonly used, pen. Thank you. How about this one? The most grades here. Not recognized. Right? In fact, it's a spelling error, right? Now, it's a spelling error. I'd like you to type click on spell check. So everything on the wavy line is spell check here. So right click, some suggestion of what. What's the suggestion? Read it out. Okay, what's another one? Neuropsychology, that's right. Neuro, everyone prefers to get neuro, right? That's the problem I had when I was a student. There's no way when I was writing my thesis that I could get a computer to agree with me. There's no way I could escape or avoid the shame when I present in front of, say, other research students or in front of other professors, right? This topic, because every time I show the class this, I get a wavy line there. Every time. Until I learn how to do autocorrect and change it. So I went to Microsoft Office, so this applies to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, everything. To essentially add this, I added two things. One, every time whatever neuropsychology comes up, change it back to geropsychology. That's one thing I did. The other thing I did, I just added it to the dictionary. The thing is, when I reinstall the Office, I have to do this again. So I just rebooted my computer. So this is what it tells us about Microsoft Office. Doesn't recognize geropsychology. Now let's turn it around. What does Microsoft Office's response to tell us about geropsychology? What does Microsoft know about geropsychology? The answer is nothing. Nothing. In fact, Microsoft thinks that geropsychology is neuropsychology. You are being prompted whether neuropsychology is actually the word you're typing. So neuropsychology, as you know, psychology student, is the most established field, right? So the practical point is when you write assignment, please be careful. Right? I obviously understand this. Right? When you write assignment, if I see neuropsychology there, okay, I will be thinking whether want to read it again. Okay? I may not immediately remove minus your mark, but yeah, I just want you to be careful. But the point is that our everyday computer application like that do not yet even know of this word because it's almost like Microsoft Office doesn't exist. So it's almost like saying, look, geropsychology doesn't exist. It's not part of your textbook, but I just like you to know this point. Right? The point is that hardly anyone actually knows what geropsychology is. If you say psychology, people know. Yes? I'm from the Department of Psychology. I'm a psychologist student. Alright. Wow, you can read my mind, right? That's what some right? So what I'm thinking now, right? That's there. In fact, that was what happened to me. I went on stage. I think in my undergraduate days I got some bursary. Shook hands with the person who gave me a bursary. Asked me a good question before I went down on stage. So what's your major? I said psychology. Then immediately replied, so you can read my mind. I said, I hope so. Because you tell me how much you will help, where to get the next paper, right? But so now, so first of all, we know that people around us may not understand what psychology is. So that's already a need to be busted. If you add gero to that, gosh, nobody knows what they're talking about. You go shake your head, I'm a geropsychologist, I do that, actually nobody knows who I am. But they pretend to know, or they think that they know. So wow, geropsychology is interesting. Wow, that's a great job they're doing. But anyway, right. So that's the view here. We are really in very uncharted waters. Some of us may, well, I have gone through it many times. I still do from time to time, from day to day. I just need to pick up my name card, show it to people. If they bother to read, right, and ask me, at least they're interested. They don't ask me about it, most of they don't know. And that's fine. Sometimes we don't find it. Right? Hardly anybody knows what geropsychology is. Even in the industry of aging. So I'm talking about hospitals, talking about mental health clinics, I'm talking about, say, senior care centers. Yes, they know aging. They know that the person aging is frail, may be falling, may need counseling, and so on and so forth. Right? But when you start to say, you need geropsychological assistance, what's that? Right? Today we know, at least from APA, that's not right, we research, right, what professional geropsychology is. But I hope this course, right, helps you appreciate that beyond the professional aspect of the psychology of aging, that there is a lot of what we call knowledge content involved. Nobody can do any profession if skills and knowledge, his or her skills and knowledge are not recognized as useful, right? Why do these, what we call staff or people who say help older people? That means people who work with senior activity centers, people who counsel seniors, people who counsel or assist caregivers. Where do they take their skills and training from? Or knowledge? They have, in some way or another, they would have gotten skills/knowledge on geropsychology, right? The psychology of aging. Older people tend to think this way, older people tend to think that way. Whether those is good or accurate knowledge, that's another thing. Right? Now, hardly anyone recognizes that all these knowledge and skills belong to this body that should be called geropsychology. Now let's turn it around. If the psychology of aging is geropsychology, what is psycho-geron? All this? Is it the same thing? Okay, how many of us hands up again? First time you see this word, psycho-gerontology. Hands up. Thank you very much for your honesty. So okay, I'll give it the answer. Right, since it's the first time. Well, they're actually the same thing. They're actually the same thing. But psychogerontology is even more rare. It's rarer. So you cannot even not only will you see a wavy line below, you have this on Microsoft. Right? If you type this in Google, you won't have anywhere like an APA kind of association or body that tells you what it is. Right? So for our practical purposes, because APA has already recognized the term, we will use geropsychology. But I just like you to know that really it could well have been called psychogerontology. Could well have been called that. One other way to understand how a field is called is to look at its salient aspect. So now, geropsychology, just looking here, geropsychology. Which, between the gero and the psychology, which is the salient part? The part that carries the most weight in this world? Psychology, right? Now, how about the second one? Psychogerontology. Which one is the most salient? Gerontology, right? Yeah. Well, it's because it kind of, the full word is there, and it happens, it occurs in the right side or the back of the word. So the gero part in geropsychology acts as a prefix, right? So to speak. In the other one, the psychogerontology acts as the prefix. So it's kind of adding meaning to the actual word. That's prefix, right? That's what it is. So we would also like to understand geropsychology as a branch of psychology. So we start with psychology. We have all taken psychology 1000 or HP 1000, right? You have taken HP 1100. You have taken HP 2300. So that's your base knowledge. Now we are adding something to the scaffold using Geropsy's theory, right? So this is why we take the term geropsychology. But really, it could have been called psychogerontology if you start from gerontology. So once again, why the reason has something to do with the development of each of the fields. Psychology is more developed than gerontology. Okay, so now at least after the course, during the course when the classmates, when people ask you to say no, I know what I'm studying. I know why it's taught that way, and you can correct them if they tell you to study neuropsychology. Okay, the last one I'm just going to go quickly. Geriatric psychology versus geriatric psychiatry. Essentially, the difference is psychology versus psychiatry. Right, so we know the second one, psychiatry, is a practice in medicine, right? It's a branch of medicine, that means understanding how the body works enough for medicinal practices, pharmaceuticals or surgical, etc. Right, to aid the human body. To understand how to understand the human body. Right, where psychology goes beyond the biological. Right. Both of them are similar for the word geriatric. So you may find that some other people may call what we are studying geriatric psychology. Right? Especially the people who come from the medicine background. And they are the same. Alright, so you're not confused. So they are very clear where we are going. You know this is uncharted space. This space is labeled differently by different people from different fields, but more or less they are trying to understand or kind of referring to the same thing. Alright, so this nomenclature is not so much to tell you and help you to memorize the jargon, but how to understand the field, the scope. Questions on this? Alright? Alright. Then career pathways. Okay. I think I covered this a bit. Essentially, a neuropsychologist, you could either do research or practice. In each of these, you could educate either in teaching, if you do research, or in training, if you do practice. These are the career pathways usually available. Usually, to do any career, you need to have you'll be required to have some form of graduate education. And in Singapore, there are only just these two courses: master's level at SUSS and at NTU in gerontology. Right? In geropsychology or the psychology of aging, this is the first round in NTU, division psychology. NUS has a psychology of aging class. Okay, it used to have, I don't think it has right now. I think the professor there has left. Right? That's logic. In medical school, you will have geriatric psychiatry taught. Okay? Okay. I think that's about it. You can click on all those. You can click on those to have a closer look. Especially in the US, maybe it best value to share this. In the United States, where it is very developed, right? There is this council called COPGTP, the Council of Professional Geropsychology Training Programs. So something like APA, it accredits training program in gerontology/geropsychology. Okay, in fact, the word geropsychology is there. The name of that council has the word geropsychology. Okay, so this is yet another place where you can say that these are credible geropsychologists. They know what geropsychology is. Okay, they have anywhere from, in fact, where do they start? They start from doctoral program. So bachelor level, they are not bothered. They are not bothered with master's level. Right? If you want to go into any of these programs, it's doctoral level. That's a way of view. Then you need to go into those programs. Right? And this doctoral program is go by research or practice. Within a PhD program or doctoral program, there is pre-doctoral. So within PhD, before you graduate, there is pre-doctoral internship. And that's really putting yourself, say, 6 months in some hospital or some what they call VA or Veteran Affairs facility, right, to deal with problems that the older people bring. Then one graduate from the doctoral program, there's still post-doctoral training. Right? It's not the end, it's a post-doctoral training. Once again, essentially involves more what we call not internships anymore, but more attachment, or what we call, in today's terms, from medical professionals or medical doctors after they graduate from medical school, they go into what's the term for it? They go into housemanship in Singapore and a residency program in Singapore. I don't know if you know anybody who is a medical doctor. Right? So in the States, this postdoctoral training in gero or professional geropsychology is kind of an equivalent of that. After one has to first graduate from the doctoral. Then after that, you get your license after you're done. So it's only after you do the postdoctoral training, you get or what we call housemanship in geropsychology, you get your license to practice. That means you can now be an independent practitioner, you open your own clinic or center or something. And yet, to maintain your license, you can engage in continual post-licential training, which this council also administers. Right? Among the international members, unfortunately, you don't see Singapore. Queensland University is the only one there. So this is one other place to further your studies. Associate members, well, these are American. So that's about it. Ready? So you can say this is the APA of geropsychology, if you like. This is the established body in the world that's recognized for the education and training of geropsychologists. Right? So I have this all in the slides. I will give the slide. Okay. Any questions so far? This is something that you may be interested in. If you so choose to further your studies in gerontology in Singapore, you would choose among these three existing options. The center one is the NTU, Master in Applied Gerontology, right? So that essentially has three, you can say, common core, concentrated core electives, or three main components there. Right? It's offered by the School of Social Sciences, which is where we are most of us are at. Right? At the master's level, once you graduate, if you're interested, they have 3 intakes per year. I'm not advertising for them, but I'm just saying this is one option. So you can look at those courses there. Some of them, such as you see the aging and end of life, death and dying and bereavement. That is taught by Andy Ho, our associate professor Andy Ho, who is from Division of Psychology. So that is a what do you call it? A cross. I don't know what you call it. A cross taught module. So level 4,000 year 4 students plus master students and same thing, but assessment requirements. Right? So that's the NTU course. After 1.5 years of full-time studies, you get a master's in applied gerontology. Now, those two on the left and right, SUSs. The one on the right is the SUSS PhD in gerontology. The one on the right is the SUSS Master in gerontology. So it's not applied, but it's called simply gerontology. So you can compare now with the NTU course, where the similarities and differences. right? The one on the right side, Master in Geropsychology, SUSS, essentially prepares you for 3 tracks. The applied research track, the practitioner track, and the management. Right? If you are interested in the applied research track or research track and to take it even further, you can go for the PhD one. So that one is essentially, if you look at the core courses on the left, top left, those core courses there are the same core courses under the right side applied research track. But thereafter, it goes deep dive into the various research methods and processes, and you graduate after, say, 4 to 5 years of PhD in geropsychology. So that's the highest you could go in Singapore. That's about it. No geropsychology yet. Right? So how did I get my own training? I did my psychology training in the US. So I graduated with a Bachelor of Social Sciences (honors). That was then how it's called. I don't know if it's called the same. Right? So that was really back then. And the first thing I did was not to do my master's. Right? The first thing I did was to actually work as a counselor for about 1.5 years to 2 years. So I actually dealt with people with mental health, behavioral, relationship, family issues. So very general, right? I was in the counseling center as a staff. But it was then that I enrolled in a clinical psychology program, structured training. What is now today known as the James Cook University Singapore Master of Clinical Psychology. Right. However, I opted out of this program halfway, so instead of graduating with a master's, I graduated with a postgraduate diploma at that point. Right. Primarily because I realized that in the industry then, even among my teachers, many of them are not training us or teaching us with the latest. Because simply they are not doing research on the latest or state-of-the-art therapeutic methods or clinical psychology methods of what they're teaching. They're not doing research themselves, they are taking research by others, sure, and they're teaching them good, but those are not yet the latest. Then only I found out after thinking that really it's very difficult to keep up unless there's a structured training program, right, set up primarily there. To have James Cook University to set up the kind of knowledge base is not going to be very realistic, because at that point it existed, and still today it exists as a private, not publicly funded, private education institution. Right? So I will not see full-time faculty staff there who have a tenure, who are likely to stay there for years, who would have their knowledge, translate their accumulated knowledge into documents, into curriculum. It's just going to be not realistic. So I looked around, there wasn't any other program in Singapore to do that. So on top of that, I moved into research. So then for the next 5 years, I worked as a research analyst in the Agency for Integrated Care, Singapore, which is an organization under the Ministry of Health, Singapore. But so that is when I started to realize that there is a contribution of psychology to be made in aging healthcare or aging care. That is also the time when I enrolled in NTU's then called not School of Social Science but Humanities and Social Sciences, HSS, right, in the PhD program there, here. Right? And at that point, there wasn't a professor anymore, anyone like that. In fact, Prof. Anymore came to Singapore from Hong Kong only in 2014, and he was appointed in 2015. So it was when he came to Singapore and approached me in AIC, Agency for Integrated Care, to collaborate with his research project, that I realized, okay, finally in Singapore, we would have a prospect of a tenured professor in geropsychology. Right, so at that point there wasn't. So if that's the case, then how can I do a PhD? There's nobody to guide me, right? To advise me, right? So I realized there's no other way. I have to do the research. I have to do the topic if I want to contribute to this knowledge. So I got Associate Professor Ringo Ho to be my supervisor. Some of you know who he is. He taught you 2100. Right? So he could advise me not on the general aspect, no, but certainly on the statistics aspect and on the research aspect. So it is a lot of my own learning, but I have to depend on industry knowledge and my own reading. So that's how my PhD was organized before I graduated. So in Singapore, at this point, still there isn't more than 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know more than one other person who does geropsychology both as a educator as well as a practitioner. So I know one other person who does that. This person is in the industry. Right? So aside from myself, this one. Then as far as geropsychology is concerned in higher education or in academia, there are only a very few in Singapore. Geropsychology. Gerontology, yes, a few, but geropsychology, perhaps we are looking at Prof. and Evo as well. So what I'm saying is, look, the space is still very new, untapped. There is a lot of knowledge here out there. Right? There's a lot of knowledge here out there. Practitioners are relying on experience, not knowledge. In the industry. That you can take take away from what he's saying. You can of course also verify that by attaching yourself to any agent care organization and check whether what I'm saying is really right. Okay. So that's the state here. So in Singapore, those are the only options. But hopefully in time to come there will be more. If you are interested in this area, yes, you do want to consider overseas, and if you do want to consider this area in Singapore due to whatever situation, practical situation, then these are the only options. Okay, any questions on this? If not, I think we should take a quick break before we come back. Let's take a 10-minute break. We tend to assume, if we take the perspective of theory of a conventional developmental psychologist, we just say, look, aging-related decline is from 0 to 100, let's say, the person starts to decline, say from 30. Your brain isn't that quick to solve mathematical puzzles or block puzzles and all that, right? Not all of these decline the same speed, right? And the same manner. Same thing for illnesses, dementia, the decline in abilities, right? How about even other physical illnesses like stroke? The rehabilitative potential, the improvement in function. Right? So all these vary over time. Those are important because these are this means different experiences for the individual. Also, thank you. Okay, let's come back to the other under cross-sectional, the cons. So that's one con. Back to this table. Everybody answer already, I think everybody. Thank you. So this table, the con. Any other con of cross-section? Before longitudinal. That's the main con, yes? Okay, open up to the rest of the class. Any other con you can think of? Let's try to exhaust the list. Any other weaknesses of cross-sectional?
There's a compound in individual differences.
Compound of individual differences. Okay, can you elaborate? Maybe use an example. Yeah. Right. Individuals will have, sure, but that for cross-sectional compounding effect with individual differences. Okay, that's possibly. But I thought, as now we know in HP 1100, we will have many of such individuals, all with different individual differences. We could actually partial that out. That is what we call it. We could just select them by random random sampling, and then if it's an experimental design, assign them randomly, what we call random assignment groups. That will solve it. Anybody? Okay, so this list actually seems right. The pros of cross-sectional, known in the literature are mainly this one, less costly, avoid retest confirm, So the other three possibly, but maybe not, depending on how the research is actually carried out. And this obviously is the main one for cross-sectional. Right? It's difficult, so the exercise I'd like you to go through in your own mind is how do you articulate and express something like that? Right? To say, look, we need to go beyond cross-sectional to longitudinal because we cannot investigate aging-related effects. But what really is aging-related effects? Right? You need to hopefully be able to articulate that. Alright, so now let's go to longitudinal. Right? What are the pros of longitudinal? Alright, let's go. Pros of longitudinal, this area. Longitudinal. Just list it. Just give me one.
Detect age-related changes.
We can. Okay, that means this is a con, so the longitudinal takes care of this. Okay, can. Thank you. I'll find another color for it. This group, any other pros? Effects over time. Isn't that the opposite of? Is there opposite of one of these? Isn't it this? Is it this? Basically, age. You said aging related, right?
Yes.
Aging related effects. Aging with an ing there means time, right? Right. So isn't that whether or not it's okay? If it's intrapersonal, then that is due to this intrapersonal variation due to time. So it's actually still this. Okay. Let's open this for the class. Is there anyone here you could find any other pro or strength of a longitudinal piece? Longitudinal. Yep, that is the main one. We can what we call investigate intrapersonal variations due to time, which in cross-sectional research cannot do. Okay, I can even say, look at the cross-sectional, the one side circle, low attrition. So the strength is high. Would that solve the problem of longitudinal? In fact, it's the opposite. Right? The con of longitudinal is high attrition. Right? Okay. Same thing. Cross-sectional has a strength of less of these longitudinal more expensive. Right? Avoid confound or retest. Right? That means, well, would a longitudinal have a weakness or retest problem? Yes. Okay. So now it seems like anyone else with strength of longitudinal? Hands up. Anyone? Time for you to contribute. Yes. Strength of one strength of longitudinal study is a smaller. Okay, yes, possibly. I won't say always the case, depending. Right, but smaller sample size to begin with when they attrit or fall out, then that is 0. So people attrit for various reasons, right? And possibly smaller sample or smaller number of unique participants, but there is a caveat there, right? Yes. Okay, cause effect investigations. Yes, that's right. We could not be determined ethically or practically in a experimental cross-sectional setting. Maybe examined, right? Yes, those are possibly the longitudinal. Right, good. Now, let's open up this question for the class. Anybody who could think of the reason, you just shout it out. What are the reasons why people fall out? A treat from a longitudinal study. Yeah. Anybody? Yeah. They die. Yes. Yep. Any other? That's actually the most common. They actually die. Either due to natural causes or not. So natural causes include illness. Often if you study patients, obviously they may die. Other reasons for attrition? Move away, okay, from saying one place to another, you cannot contact them. Right? That's true. That is true for all longitudinal research, not just for aging. Okay. Any other reasons you can think of why people attrit from an aging study longitudinal research?
they become incapacitated as they age.
Their health is become less healthy. Okay.
Maybe at a certain time point they can be like on some line or by day.
Alright, so deterioration, okay, over time. Physical, cognitive, functional deterioration, such that it's not feasible to even participate, right, in subsequent trials. Yes? That's a very useful point. Right? Any other reasons? So we have death, we have functional decline. Lack of interest, okay, bit elaborate. Okay. They may get bored, right? Sure. I can imagine any longitudinal research will suffer from that. But how is that lack of interest different in aging? What do you think? So these are older people we're dealing with. Okay. Responsibilities. Okay. Sure. Well, I'm imagining any other person will also have responsibilities. How are they different? Think for a minute here. What is so unique about interest level or kinds of interest when it comes to older people? Such that many of them or more of them will fall out from a longitudinal study than a study that involves younger people. Yes, okay.
Can't use communicative devices like handphone. Maybe they don't check their email because they don't have email.
And the research requires that.
Yeah.
The research like using quadrics to take data, right?
Or like, maybe they can't even be contacted because they can't take the phone.
Right. So that's functional decline. I used to be able to hear. Now 2 years later, I cannot hear anymore. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. The term for that is called digital divide. Okay. So as people age, this divide grows. There's already a divide between those who have and those who don't have the technology, those who know how to use and don't know how to use. Right, we have a chapter on geropsychology that we'll cover. But as time goes and as a person becomes older, this divide grows. That means older people are less in tune or become less in touch with the latest technologies. Right, with the latest technology. So for instance, people who used to be, let's say, very adept, people who used to, let's say, social media, Twitter, right? Twitter came first, so you have a generation who went for it, right? Then came, which one? Which is the next social media that came about? Okay, Facebook and Twitter, which one came first? Facebook, right? Okay, so you have one group. Then after that, Twitter. After that, what happens? Which are the other? Instagram. After that? How about WhatsApp? Right, then after that you have the other ones, right? So you find that, right, with the disruption and now with the pandemic, there's explosion, right, in the use of social media. But this explosion happens to certain group of people, right? Not others. Isn't it? Right? That's the digital divide we're talking about. So now we start to see certain platforms, certain social media platforms, right, are more used by people of a certain age. Age being age profile. Of course, there are other things, not just age. So for instance, you find Twitter and Facebook, actually the middle adult people, middle age. Right? Twitter perhaps even older than that. Okay. So if you move down the list to the most recent, say Telegram, TikTok, right? You don't see that many older people. Right? So same thing. Do you see, well, people in their 20s, well, maybe many of you in their 20s actually use Twitter and Facebook, both of them. Right, so we'll talk more about this in geropsychology. Yeah? That's a good point from them. Okay, any others? Yes?
Can also be the executive part where you just go on, where you see as a waste of time.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get it.
Could it also be the executive part, like we discussed
Yes, the executive kicking in from the shades and releases stage of cognition theory. Right? I don't want to waste time anymore. I participate in research good enough. Right? Thank you. Yes, I think you raised your hand. Say the same thing? Okay, great mind things alike. Okay. Others? Any other point? Okay, that's that. We'll move on from here. Okay. Okay, I think we have covered all these. The threats to longitudinal design of the weaknesses, attrition, retest, missingness, right? And planned missingness. Key threats to the validity of. Okay, actually the fourth one, planned missingness isn't a threat. I should actually place it under a potential solution to the missingness. So what is missingness? Missingness is people are treat, right? So they don't give values. They don't give you your test result. Or as their functional ability declines over time, they can give you data for certain tests or certain functions, but not others. So you have missing values, right? You know that statistically that will be a problem, right? Missing value. The textbook will tell you there are 3 types of missing conditions statistically. Right? Go read out those. Right? Missing completely at random, missing at random, and missing not at random. These are 3 known types of missingness. Each of these to be dealt with differently in statistical fashion. I won't go into that. I will go into that in methodological content. Okay. So planned missingness is one way statisticians and researchers use, right, to take care of missing values statistically, right, by design. That means to say that they will plan for missing at certain time point from certain people on certain instruments, on certain inventories, right, expecting missingness to happen, right, and when that occurs, then obviously they have a priori or planned ways to deal with the missing. Right? One way you can say, one way that is common is to have an expectation on probability of missingness. Say the missingness in 2 years, missing will be 50%. In 3 years, missing will be 75%. Let's say for this question or for that question. So I take this expectation and factor it into whatever equation or whatever algorithm I want the data to go to. And that's the idea of planning. Okay, let's move on. Okay, right. In the textbook, there are 3 main ways to that geropsychological research is being done now. One is called meta-analysis. You may have heard of this. Essentially, this one pulls data from published literature, that means journal articles. So, which usually report means, standard deviations, T-scores, right, F-scores, all those. Pull all of them together and find a combined effect size. Combined, and that's called meta-analysis. Alright. Why do we do this? That's because we know that aging experiences happen differently in different places. Right? We say it's cultural difference. So in Western world and Eastern world, the experience of aging is different. Say cognitive decline. Say experiences of discrimination at workplace, called aging. Right? Say inability to access healthcare. Right? So these kind of phenomena happen everywhere, but in a different way, experienced subjectively differently by different people at different places. A meta-analysis allows different researchers to do their research, to publish their research, and then to kind of take a bit from here, right? Take your reported statistics in your journal article, put them all together and calculate the combined score. That's meta. Now, a mega analysis, which is otherwise known as an individual patient, in this healthcare setting, or individual participant meta-analysis, essentially goes one step above the normal, beyond the normal meta-analysis by requesting raw data from individual researchers who publish them. So instead of just taking a journal article, take this journal article, take this journal article, see what is available there, put together. I actually write an email to you or call you on, Dr. So-and-so, Professor so-and-so, can I have the raw data? So, well, that's actually a bit more cumbersome. So you have data coming to you as a researcher in different formats. Excel, SPSS, Stata, whatever. Okay, written in different way, having different configurations. Okay, and using those, well, you are supposed to then run your analysis, which, well, that is known to help reduce type 1 error. Alright, false positives. So that goes one step further in sort of trying to be accurate. Now, the next one to help make research data even more accurate and this time plus transparent, such that it could be reproduced by researchers, other researchers, is what we call harmonization of data. So data harmonization goes beyond data analysis. So on top of just requesting raw data harmonization actually creates new variables, either beforehand, before research is conducted, or after research conducted and published. Create new variables, of which are coded in the same or very similar fashion, called some coding protocol. What do I mean by coding? Coding means if you give a questionnaire, right, to what extent do you experience this? Agree, disagree, strongly disagree, right? So agree is 1, disagree is 0. That's coding. So coded in the same way, or coded in a similar way, or following a certain coding protocol. Right? So it's almost like saying that data harmonization is kind of almost doing a very big scale research on multi-sites, multinational in fact. The same question. Right? If this is done beforehand, it is called prospective or a priori data harmonization. This could also be done retrospectively. That means research has been conducted, right? We create new variables. That means there must be some way of which to transform collected data into a configuration of that new variable, right? Such that now sort of there's the same, it's a data dictionary. Right? So that is research. That's really the latest trend in geropsychology. Questions? Okay, let's move on. Okay, we are now in chapter 3. Okay. This part will be quite fast because many of these things you could read and are not so technical. Okay. So we know that there are 3 types of demographic shifts, right, that gave rise to the phenomenon here. But people are experiencing, right, more chronic degenerative conditions, such as dementia, right, and stroke, rather than acute problems such as coronavirus. That's an acute one, right? Of course, people are living longer. With living longer means, right, longer years of healthy life or longer years of not so healthy. Right? With longer expectancy, life expectancy also means longer years of happy and high quality of life or not so high quality of life towards the end. And falling birth rate, because its total fertility rate is on the decline in many developed countries and even developing. So that's one trend. Those are 3 demographic shifts that are shaping the aging phenomenon. In Singapore, we used to think 5 years ago, 2015, 1 in 8. When I started to conceptualize my thesis, right, 1 in 8 Singaporeans will become 65 or older. Okay? By 2030, right, however, the population now is 1 in 4. In 2030, so what we are saying now is, from now we look towards 2030, so in about 9 years to come, the calculation is a quarter of Singapore residents are going to be 65 and above. Demographic shifts once again, comparing different Singapore with East Asian countries and OECD societies. Right? Singapore being the orange line, right? So you find that our population age 65 above is increasing, and we are kind of closing there. We are approaching that kind of levels, that kind of percentages on the y-axis, right? That other East Asian countries which have gone before us, such as Japan, Hong Kong, right, are going towards. So at some point, the orange line, which is Singapore, will cut the other 2 lines. That means at that point, we are aging at the same rate, same speed, right? And these are the East Asian nations, and also ECD nations. Okay. Population, citizen population by age, well, you can see over time, until 2015, the blue is below 25 years, the orange is 25 to 64, or what we call economically active age. Right? So yes, the economically active age is increasing, right, but not at that high rate. Here, nursing home beds for fast-aging Singapore. So you look at the 2010 or 2010 point. That's where the yellow and the grey lines intersect. What does that mean? The yellow line, resident elderly population 65 years or older. Now, that's the yellow line. So that has increased, right? The grey line, nursing home beds per 1,000 resident elderly 65 years or older. So you find a resident bed, per capita nursing home resident beds was declining, right? Somewhat till from 2000 to 2010 and declining more sharply till 2015. Right? Then only it picked up. These are the statistics given. That is because somewhere in 2011, the government, the Ministry of Health made a commitment, right, that they will double the nursing home beds by 2020, which they did. Alright. However, the grey line is below the yellow. That's the problem here. We don't have enough nursing home beds for the people aged 65 and above. The question then is, will everyone who is aged 65 and above require a nursing home bed? If the answer is no, then to what extent? That becomes a question. Another trend that's shaping the aging phenomenon is the concept of health change. Right? We find that, right, in the past, health is the absence of disease. Then, right, in 1948, the WHO stated that health is a state of complete well-being, so social, mental, physical. By 2011, right, the understanding of health is one's ability to adapt to difficulties and challenges. So notice how it moves from disease, whether absence, to well-being, right, to then adaptation. Right? In 2016, the domains that are being that pertain to the 2011 understanding of health are being developed. Okay, so social participation, mental functioning, and so on, all these, right, are being developed on what we call operational definitions of the 2011 understanding of health. Right? So what is health? What is healthy? What is successful aging? What is healthy aging? The meaning changes because concept of health changes over time. Alright, what is health? This one is just an expansion of the earlier slide. Okay, here we go. The age dependency ratio. That means people, right, who are above 65, people who are younger than 15, is that right? Yes, 15, are thought to be dependent on people who are between 15 to 64, economically or financially, so to speak. Right? So we can see that we now have an overall, Singapore has an overall age dependency ratio that has decreased because of low birth rate. Okay? And then if this continues to drop, then we will soon become one person economically active supporting two. Right? We hope that not to happen. So the good news is towards the 2016, 2017, 2018 is some increase in that. If that trend continues, then Singapore is not it's not so dangerous yet. The family dynamics, you know that, delayed childbearing, smaller family sizes. There's a rise in what we call the sandwich generation in Singapore. Now, what is the sandwich generation? The sandwich generation are people who are supporting older people, parents, and children, simultaneously. Make a guess. What is this number here? In Asia, particularly in these countries, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, China, right? in this, okay, actually in Singapore, Hong Kong, and China, right? What do you think is the percentage of sandwich population? People who are sandwiched between the elders and the young. Make a guess. Okay, look at the percentage column there. Prevalence of sandwich generation in working age population. So Australia is not in Asia. Take out Australia, right? The rest of it. If you kind of average all that out, what is the number you sort of get? Minus Australia. So 37, 27, 6, 26, 18, 19. One in five in Asia are now in this class called a sandwich class. Okay? Right, these statistics you can read on your own when I give you the slides. Right, essentially people are spending more time and income on care. Right? Those are the statistics. The question is, for research and for advocacy, could this sandwich generation afford to care financially in terms of time and other resources? So this is a study done where people are asked to rate either we are struggling to cope, we are coping okay, or we are coping well. Okay, and you could see, just compare the countries. Singapore is count from bottom to third one from the bottom. Singapore has 21% says we are struggling to cope, 56% saying we are coping, and 23% saying we are coping well. Alright. So these are trends that are emerging that impact policy in aging. Right. There is a study done that asks this question: why do China and Hong Kong caregivers spend a greater proportion of income on their parents as compared to their Asian counterparts? So the second group of about 11 to 25%, right, or 11 to 25% of their income, right, of these respondents are spent on their parents. That's what we're saying. So China, there are 52% of the respondents who reported that they spend 11 to 25% of their income, right, on their aging or aged. Okay. Followed by 49 is Hong Kong. So 49% of the Hong Kong respondents actually say that they spend 11 to 25% of their income on their parents. But the rest of Asia, only 39% says they spend 11 to 25% of their income on their parents. Will caregiving cost peak? Will it reach a certain highest point and then not rise anymore? Right, so these are the online articles. When you Google, you might see some of these reports. Right. So this is a question that we could think about in our reflective journals. Right. What are the problems caused by all those above phenomena that I discussed? Demographic shifts, the health concept changes, and so on. Right? How are all these above? What problems or issues are actually caused by, or can possibly be caused by, those above trends? Right? Four main areas are covered in the textbook: health, education, work, and family. Right? I've covered essentially those for the Singapore situation. The textbook covers the US. Right? If you read the textbook, you realize there are sections just devoted to healthcare policy, education policy, family policy, work, and retirement policy. So the question that we want to ask as we go along this entire HP 3303 is, first of all, what issues do we expect to happen in each of these areas? Health, education, work, family, right, due to the aging phenomenon. Right? Could we identify not two, maybe one, two or more policies or programs that can address these issues better? So this is something for us to think about. I want to ask you to discuss, but something to think about, to reflect about possibly in your journals. your reflective journal. Okay, I think that's my last slide. Okay, so that was my last slide. There will be less and less me talking and more of you doing the talk in the following weeks, especially when we start the flipped classroom sessions in week 3. Right? However, I don't know the exact enrollment yet, so I can only say, look, for next week, prepare by reading those 2 chapters, 4 and 7. Right? You can start to form your teams. I don't know. I can say right now it's about 4 to 5 people. You start to form your team and start focusing on what topic you like to do, right, on the project. Those topics will be any of those topics in this 13-week course. Okay, and you can now after today you would have a lot of material to reflect on. So you possibly could start writing your journal already. A journal is supposed to be written as you go along, not one shot. If you're going to do it one shot also can, then there will be a lot of things to reflect on. Right? I require, if I'm not wrong, 400 to 600 or 500 right, journal piece. But if that's just rambling, then you won't get a very good grade, right? Just be up here and there. You want to synthesize, so I encourage you to start thinking and continue to think along as we go along with this course. Right? We have the basic building blocks today and tomorrow. So that's what you can do from now. Next week, what you expect is a much shorter lecture. We won't have, we will just in fact cover the 2 chapters. Right? I'll give you more information on the flipped classroom. Okay, I'm thinking now perhaps we will have a series of in-class debates on different topics. Right? I'll see how to organize it. Alright? But more information on that first, I need to know the total number and then I'll see how many teams. Okay? And then your next deadline for submission, it will be week 4 for your first entry of the reflective journal. That's the first one. Week 4, today is week 1, right? So we have 3 more weeks to go. Okay? So better do early because you have less assignment to hand up. If you go on the term, you have more things to hand up. Alright? So if no questions, any last questions? No questions, thank you. I'll see you next time.